Over 1 million teachers use IXL in their classrooms every day for one reason. They love it. The gold standard teaching and learning solution, IXL provides thousands of instructional resources, actionable analytics, and assessments to increase teacher capacity and effectiveness. IXL takes the guesswork out of lesson planning with ready made plans. Built in engagement tools such as customizable competitions make learning fun for students. Dr. Trujillo, superintendent at Tuscan Unified School District, says this about IXL, quote, "For the teacher, IXL opens up the door to be a lot more effective and provide more differentiated instruction to the different subgroups of students in their class." End quote. Empower your teachers with the tools and insights they need to enhance instruction, all in one single, easy to use platform. Get started today at ixl.com.
You're listening to Monday Matters, a Principal Matters podcast production.
Hi, friends. This is Will Parker back with my co host, Dr. Jen Schwanke, for another Monday Matters. Jen, it's February, and this is Black History Month. I just want to say before we get started that this month we're going to be highlighting every Friday an encore episode of an extraordinary Black leader who has been on our podcast in the past. So these won't be going out through our newsletter, but you can find them on the website, or if you subscribe to the podcast, you can check out those downloads anywhere you listen to podcasts. But we just featured Dr. Dawn Parker, author and wonderful leader from the Chicago area this last week. But how are you doing, Jen, as you step into February?
I'm doing quite well. I was just on a call with a chief academic officer cohort that is being run through ASCD. And it was funny because we're all bemoaning the winter weather. February has been a lion indeed. So that was kind of fun. And we got a lot of good conversation about leading academics. Super fun.
I'm so sorry that you guys have been hit so hard, especially in Ohio. We got hit hard in Oklahoma, but then we've been enjoying some sunny weather. But I will actually be in the Columbus area next week when you're heading to Nashville. And so for those of you that are going to be at AASA, look up Jen's breakout sessions there. And if you're going to, if you have any opportunity to say hello to me while I'm in the Columbus area next Thursday and Friday, feel free to reach out. But I'll be working with some schools across the Ohio area that I've been working with virtually. I get to see them in person. But Jen, I wanted to bring today's conversation back to something you've been writing about in your Principal Problems newsletter, and that's AI. You set the stage. You just came back from a conference in San Diego, and you brought some really helpful thoughts about this that I know we're going to be chewing on for a long time.
Right. And there's, I did say in my newsletter, I'm really fatigued by the AI conversation, I'll be honest, but that's not allowed. I can't be fatigued because it's a real thing and we have to keep watching this, have to keep looking at it. And so, yeah, I was, as part of this chief academic officer cohort, we were able to, ASCD secured funding. And so a group of about 200 educators from across the country came to San Diego. And it was really an incredible conference. We talked about, Generation AI and what that means in schools. And let me first say that there was a wide spectrum of readiness and understanding and engagement with AI across districts, which is not a surprise. But at the very far end of the spectrum was one gentleman who was very troubled because his district is trying to ban AI. And we all got a good chuckle, but he said, "No, I'm serious." He said, I feel like I need to say, hey, this isn't something you can ban because it is here. It's being used. And if we think it's not, we're really missing the boat here." And so then on the other end of the spectrum are districts who are doing some really amazing things to try and get ahead of the bad parts about AI and, be forward thinking also in how we're going to manage this with our students and our staff.
This is such an interesting time, and you said it. We can be as fatigued as we want about this conversation, but it's not going to go away for a long time. And in fact, this week when I received a copy of the School CEO magazine, friends of ours from Little Rock, Arkansas, they have a whole session on the AI issue. And so Jen, tell us some of the things you learned at the conference. I've got lots of things I want to add to the conversation too.
Absolutely. So I'll just a few points, as I think about this, as I worry about it, as I wonder, it occurs to me that this is the first time in education ever that students have as much information at their fingertips as their teachers do.
Mm.
Teachers used to get to decide when and how they were going to disseminate information. But literally at their fingertips, students can find out a fact, a date, a formula. They can do that. And so teachers no longer are the holders of the key. And I mean that figuratively, the teacher's key, right? The teacher's edition. I remember when I was a kid, I thought the teachers must be so smart because they had that really, really thick book and all the answers were in it. But now, students have that. And so, what is it that we as adults have that students don't? And what I would say there is we have experience because we've been around longer and we have wisdom. And so I've got um 6 or 7 kind of takeaways that I'd love to dig into here, but I wanted to pause and see what you think about that concept that we're adults aren't holders of information anymore. Any thoughts on
Well,
that?
we haven't been for a long time, but I
Right.
think it's even more accelerated now because with AI, there's the ability to do more than just accelerated searches. There's the ability to do all kinds of creation and building and design and communication and so anyone who's taken time to um, play around with or experiment with AI already knows what I'm talking about. If anyone's listening who hasn't, at some point you will, just because it's
Right.
an important tool that all of us are going to be learning. And there are dangers and benefits as we step into this conversation. I don't want to ignore either one. So go ahead,
Right.
Jenna, take us through
Right.
some of those best takeaways first.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. So, first, a shout out to Dr. Joseph South, Jessica Gardner, Brian Bown, and Richard Kaluta from ASCD and ISTE for putting on this conference. So I want to say that there were a lot of really important humans behind this, which is an important point to make. But the first few points I'm going to make are caution points. The first is we're getting besieged as school leaders by companies, by vendors, right? Who are saying, hey, try our product. We use AI. And I think it's important to say that we use AI is not the same as we use good AI. Everybody is really crazed right now to make money on AI. But we have to be really careful and think about the infrastructure that is building the AI that's being sold to us. Many small AI startups are what we would call wrappers, right? Thin layers of software that is sitting on top of some sort of infrastructure. And so that's just, it's important to think about. I think,
Mhm.
Amazon, Microsoft, Google, those kind of infrastructures are strong and smart. A sister caution there is we do need to be prepared for some AI deaths. Companies are going to fold, mergers are going to happen. And so, if we choose a product or we go one direction, we have to know that all of this is changing rapidly. And so, there's also with that some legal ramifications and concerns that are going to be coming up in terms of content scraping. And so just think about that don't invest, we none of us should invest too fully in one thing because it might not be something that is around forever. And then another caution, and everybody knows this, but it's worth repeating: AI does not mean accurate. ChatGPT is very, very confident, right? But we shouldn't confuse confident with correct. It's still going to be critical that we look at the product that AI creates for us and see if that's actually what we mean, right? So, those are some cautions. And before I go on to a couple of other points, I wanted to give you time, Will, to respond to that.
Yeah, I first want to make a personal application that's also connected to our professional work because I'm sure other people have had this experience too. ChatGPT came on the scene, 2 years ago now. We all started to figure out what do you do with this as a tool. Um, we were at first amazed at the ability of how quickly it can repeat back information, create, summarize information, redo information, all these things that AI can do. And even in my work, I began to try to figure out, okay, how can I be more clear? How can I clarify things I'm trying to say or communicate? But then there comes a point when you, and I've appreciated this about you, Jen. There comes a point when you have to be able to assure people of the authenticity of you. This is me.
Mhm.
This is not an AI
Right.
talking to you. And I think that so the pendulum's always going to be swinging. But I just want to encourage people that, and to your point earlier, if AI can clarify and confirm and strengthen the perspectives that you have, that's important, but it can't replace the perspectives you have. You're you're responsible for your own wisdom. And at the end of the
That's
day,
right.
you're responsible for your own decisions and the way you communicate too. And so, I just want to keep all that in context because there's going to be a lot, and it's happening already. You and I get so many outreaches of people wanting to be on the show now, and that's not abnormal. But what's new is the AI generated responses. You can, when we read them out loud, we can tell that this was written by a machine, not a person. And so that starts giving you that icky feeling too. And so, so we don't want people on the other side of our schools or our leadership to get the ick factor going with our
Right.
work or communication with them either.
I got a couple emails last week, Will, where somebody was trying to they wanted to market my book, and it was an AI generated email, and it told me all about me. It was really creepy. It was really creepy. I sent it to my editor at ASCD. I'm like, read this. And it was felt really weird. They had clearly scraped websites to find out who they thought I was. It
Oh,
was
it's
weird.
happening to me when I post on Facebook, when I post on
Yep.
YouTube, when I post, it's just like every place there is now, there's some kind of quick little response of something that's
Yep.
read something that you've posted and thinks it understands you, but
That's right. Ooh.
it's not a person.
Very ick factor. Okay, so here's another takeaway. Teacher grading practices are really going to need to change. And so I think a lot of our teachers, myself included as an English teacher, I was very adept at skimming a short answer paragraph for some key words or reading quickly through a student paper, and I'd mark it as accurate and grade it accordingly. But that's really not an option anymore. We're going to have to do close reads on student answers. This is just going to be necessary. I was with a group of teachers on Wednesday, and they said, these are high school teachers, and they said, we're going back to handwriting.
Mhm.
We're using the AI tools, but in terms of assessment, we're going back to handwriting, and we're pulling kids up and we're saying, okay, tell me what you wrote and tell me why. And so I don't think this is a bad thing. I do think it's going to feel like more work, but I think it's just different work, and we will settle into that.
Oh, that's so true.
Another,
I'll throw this in. Our son, my son Jack, who's currently in college, is taking one course virtually this semester, and the professor has completely switched to all handwritten notes,
yep,
all scanned, where I can tell that you've written in colored ink. All the so it's completely switched back to I need
yep,
authentic first person proof that this is you,
right,
that's writing the notes and the essays that I'm receiving from you. It's a lot of work
exactly.
on his part. My son actually wasn't bothered by it. He was like, "Well,
Yeah.
makes sense to me."
I think students who have always been focused on their own learning and their own writing and reading are thrilled when that happens in the classroom. I really do. Okay, another takeaway is that AI manipulates us, and that's not a bad thing, but it's something to be aware of. I attended a session from the creators of Fortnite, that wildly famous, infamous, beloved game. And they talked about the specific things that they do to keep players engaged, gives them autonomy, makes them feel competent, and relates to what they care about. Okay, that's awesome. It really worked for Fortnite, clearly. But AI in general knows that. And so if you've done any reading about the scary AI companion thing that people have going on, autonomy, competence, and relatedness are what AI knows how to do. So it's critical that we know that it knows it, right?
Mm.
It's working on us. And so that's where our own autonomy and our own ability to think critically about content that's given to us is going to be more important than ever. And it's hazy. The future's hazy. We don't really know where this is all going, which leads to my final point. Are you ready?
Mhm.
Okay, this is something that Jessica Gardner stood up and talked about this. She is ISTE ASCD, and she talked about the difference between using AI to make our lives easier, more efficient, versus transforming. So she said that, and I was like, yeah, of course. And then I started to really think about it and really listen to her. And she talked about this AI loop, wherein a teacher might develop an assignment using AI. The student does the assignment using AI. The teacher grades it using AI. The student makes corrections using AI. So we had this loop that goes on and on and on. And who is doing the learning? The answer is AI. AI is the only one learning there, right? And so knowing that, we have to stop thinking, okay, how can we reduce friction? This is a term that started to come up. Um, we want things to be easier. We don't want friction. But the point is, and there's a lot of really good things coming out about this right now, we actually, as human beings, need to be challenged. We need things to be hard. We need to be pushed, and otherwise, we don't learn or grow. We just are stuck exactly where we are. And so we have to think about AI as a tool for change. The magic of human beings, the essence of being a human being is to understand things, to think about them, and to not reduce the hard so much as get better at how we deal with things. And so when I think about that from the school, there's a lot of ways to apply this into life, right? But when I think about it from school, in a school setting, I think about how hard it used to be to study for a spelling test. We don't necessarily need to study for spelling tests anymore because of AI. But does that mean that we shouldn't learn how to take tests, that we shouldn't learn how to study, that we shouldn't learn how to put a pencil to paper, that we shouldn't learn how letters go together to create chunks of sound, and that sound is how we communicate? That stuff still needs to be there, no matter how we determine that we should use
Mhm.
AI.
Yeah, transformation versus efficiency. I
That's
really like
right.
that, Jen. I want to
That's
say
right.
this too, just out loud, because who knows, maybe 10 years from now, I'll be listening back to this conversation and laughing at how little we knew. But,
Right.
this week in the news, and I'm just going to date this podcast because sometimes people listen to archived episodes, but just a couple of days ago, the Spanish government announced that they're planning to ban social media for teenagers. And a lot of US based tech companies are furious because we have no regulations in our country on tech companies at all. And a lot of European countries are now beginning to push back on what they've seen as addictive um, outcomes, kids that have a hard time discerning the difference between truth and lies, all the same things that we see happening in so much of the cultural chaos that we sometimes try to manage. And so on the one hand you have this issue of free speech, and on the other hand you have this issue of unregulated technology use. And I'm not going to try to speak to what policies you should embrace politically, but I'm just saying that out loud because 10 years ago, when we were introducing a lot of these other platforms, we were all still trying to figure out how we were going to use them to accelerate learning in the work that we're doing. And now we're watching the pendulum swing now to the other side of that politically. The same thing's going to happen with AI. We're going to It's a new tool that's going to accelerate faster than we understand. It's using large language models, and I'm not a tech person, but just based on what I'm reading and understanding, that are going to continue to accelerate and get stronger and stronger within their own communications. Um, and so take a breath and just remember every day as you step into learning, this is what I hear you saying, Jen. What are the things that we need present when, even if there's no technology available at all, which are critical thinking, resilience, problem solving, phonics, mathematics, all those things that we still need to be learning to do. Now, having said that, I'm going to also just be real that when I think about like practical uses of um, some of the AI uses, I'm just going to share some of the things that I do because I think sometimes they could be helpful. Is you're trying to figure out as a leader, okay, where can I put this? And I'm actually going to pull some examples also from that article I mentioned from School CEO, because they had a list of their own subscribers that wrote in what they're using it for, and a lot of these are communications people. So I'll give you an example. Sometimes in my work, when I'm trying to clarify something, maybe I've written an email and I think I'm clear. I might take it over to ChatGPT and say, please analyze this email and tell me where I'm not being clear. And sometimes it'll say, this sentence needs to be redone, or it might rewrite that a little bit differently. But I'll usually prompt it, maintain my original words. This is me, but make sure that I'm being as clear as I can. So, Jen, it can be a companion editor in those kinds of situations. But when it comes to some of the things I saw in this article that I thought were helpful, things like standard response protocols. Okay, maybe you have a standard way you respond when there's an emergency. Well, maybe you need a template for that. And that's a template where you could just pull that up, place it back into AI and say, now replace it with this time, this situation. And it can help refine that language so you don't sound crazy when you're trying to push something out that's that way. It can be a social media campaign prompter where you've got this thing you want to share, but it needs to be really short and pithy. And so it can give you some language that you could use to shoot something out from your school. It can be a transcript polisher. And I do this sometimes in my coaching sessions where Zoom is transcribing. And I'll take that, and I don't want to give everybody the whole transcript. I might put it in AI and say, now summarize this, but just with the main points that this person may want to have later to review. And it gives a quick summary of those things. So those are just a few, Jen, of the many, many things that AI is doing. But thanks for bringing your learning back to us, because I know that that's a pretty cool opportunity to get to sit with leaders in the industry from across the U.S. Any other surprises from that conference?
It's surprising how immensely therapeutic it is to leave Ohio in January and go to San Diego. They gave us a break at one point. They're like, okay, there's snacks out there. I was like, snacks? And I went and stood on this part of the yard and looked up into the sky like a starving animal looking for food. So that was, of course I knew that, but I had forgotten how incredibly soothing sun on
We are
skin
so
was.
much alike. I guarantee that you went for a run while you were out there too.
I ran probably too far,
Yeah.
but it was great.
Well, Jen, thank you so much for bringing this conversation. In this week's post, Principal Matters listeners, you can see, we'll put links to both the last two Principal Problems newsletters that Jen wrote about with this AI part 1 and part 2. But Jen, thank you. How can listeners stay connected with you and your resources?
Yep. Find me anytime at my website, jenschwanke.com, and that's also where you can subscribe to my weekly newsletter.
And you can find this podcast and all of our other resources at my website at williamdparker.com. And until next week, thanks for doing what matters. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, would you take a moment and like, share, subscribe, or leave us a review? In fact, if you share it out with a friend, even more people can become a part of these conversations. Sign up for our newsletter at williamdparker.com for even more free resources. And don't forget to check out our website to learn more about our books, professional development offerings, Grow Academies, masterminds, executive coaching, and keynote presentations. Wow, let's keep learning together. And thank you for doing what matters.
Monday Matters.